Hi everybody and welcome to the National Aquarium. My name is Heather and we are here as part of Discovery Channel's Shark Week Hangout. This is awesome. We are so excited that you are here with us. We have lots of folks, lots of questions. We want to talk about sharks, right? So my name's Heather. I'm here at the National Aquarium and I'm standing in front of the Indo-Pacific Blacktip Reef exhibit. And as you might guess, especially shark experts, you know we have blacktip reef sharks. We in fact have 20 of them. Now, I'm pretty brave, but you're the one that's going to go in the water later, right?
Correct.
So this is Holly. Holly, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Holly Bourbon, and I'm the curator of fishes here at the aquarium as well as the dive safety officer. And I'll be joining all of you, but underwater, to help answer questions. And we've newly introduced 20 blacktip reef sharks to our new blacktip reef exhibit. So it's going to be really exciting because I'll be underwater answering questions while Heather is interfacing here at the surface.
Right, so I'm going to be just like you guys at home, living vicariously through Holly, and we'll get to ask her questions, which she's going to answer underwater. So if you want to participate and send us some of your questions, go ahead and do that on either our Twitter or Facebook feed, either through the Discovery Channel site or through the National Aquarium. We want to hear from you. We're going to have a lot of fun and find out all about sharks, find out what it's like to swim with them, and what it's like here at the National Aquarium in the brand new exhibit. But we also have a few special guests that are joining us. We have a number of folks at this Google Plus Hangout. We have tons of fans here who love sharks and care for them as much as we do. So I would like to give everybody who's on our Hangout a chance to say hello and say a little bit about yourself, maybe how you come to love sharks and why you're here as part of our Hangout. So we're going to first ask Doug.
Hi, my name is Doug Dalton, and I'm a professional diver and videographer, and I'm just excited and honored to be part of this. Excited to do my part for shark conservation.
Thank you, Doug. We are so glad you're here. We're going to have fun. We'd also like to hear from Justine.
Hi.
Hello.
So I'm Justine. I go by iJustine online and videos, and for the past couple of years we've been making Shark Week music video parodies to popular songs. So to be able to do this and actually interact, this is going to be so fun, and I can't wait to see it.
All right, so little did you know you're going to be singing later.
Oh, I am.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Let's hear from...
Baby, it's Shark Week.
See? Well, we're happy to sing, dance, whatever, because we're so excited about sharks. We're so happy to be here. We'd love to hear from Dr. Kiki Sanford.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kiki Sanford, and I'm a science communicator and scientist, and I love sharks. It was probably in college that I finally realized that Jaws was not the end-all, be-all tome of evidence about how sharks act, and so I learned a lot about how complex and amazing they are during my biology courses and many conversations with grad students as I was in school. And so I'm just really excited to be a part of this, and I can't wait to ask lots of questions.
All right, we are ready for that, especially the questions from Matt, because Matt, you look like you have good questions.
Hi, my name is Matt Myers. I've been a Shark Week fan for 26 years now. And over the past couple of years, I've just been constantly bugging Discovery, hey, you should let a fan host rather than a celebrity. And thrown myself out there as that. So Matt for Shark Week host is what I go by on Facebook and Twitter. And I've got tons of questions and just can't wait to get to it. Really happy to be here.
Well, we are so excited to have you and a little bit jealous of the decor behind you. I see all kinds of shark stuff, shark shirt. So we're all in the right spirit to celebrate sharks because, of course, they have some really important roles in their ecosystems, and they also get a little bit of a bad rap sometimes. So we're going to talk all about that. First of all, we want to find out, what are you going to be doing tonight in the exhibit?
Well, I will be wearing an underwater communication system mask that's called an OTS system, and it'll let me speak underwater and interface with Heather topside, as well as our Google Hangout group folks, to actually be able to interface with them and answer their questions as well.
That's fantastic. I'm so jealous. I think after this I'm going to have to talk to you about getting my dive certification, because this is incredible to be able to talk to you, but still, I know we actually have some divers joining us with the Google Plus Hangout. Are any of you also fellow divers?
I'm a diver. I'm a PADI dive master.
Awesome. So
I wish I was.
I know.
Me and my sister have been looking for a place that we could do that you don't have to be diver certified, and we can go in a cage. So that's our next kind of goal.
Cage is good, but you need to be able to dive.
Next time, I'll
Agreed.
work on it.
Agreed.
So before you get in the water, we have a chance while you're able to breathe freely for us to ask you some questions. So I'm going to see if any of our Google Plus Hangout buddies have some questions for you. I'm going to start with superfan Matt. Matt, do you have any questions for Holly before she gets in the water?
Sure. I would just be interested in knowing about the difference in the health and lifespan of captive sharks versus live wild sharks.
Well, as far as captive sharks, I'm trying to think of various ones I've worked with. They can be fairly long-lived on exhibits, and that's just because they don't have the natural predators you'd find out in the wild. In the wild, there probably isn't as much evidence as there could be, just because of various fishing methods, but the sharks are actually aged by their rings in their cartilage. So sharks have varied anywhere from probably 20 to 30 years. It depends really on the species. That'll actually depend on the species as far as the longevity.
I also wanted to point out to you, for those of you who are watching behind Holly, not only do we have blacktip reef sharks, which are in the exhibit below us right here, but you may have seen a slow-moving, rather large, awesome-looking shark. What was that behind you that just went by?
You were actually looking in our Shark Alley's Atlantic Predators exhibit, and that exhibit has sand tiger sharks in it. So if I had to choose one of them, it was probably a sand tiger shark.
Awesome. And surprisingly, right off the coast here, we're in Baltimore. They're not that far from us.
Correct. They are actually also found in pups as far north as Massachusetts, but they are found in South Africa and in Australia as well.
So not to say we weren't listening to you, but I saw a shark right behind you. I had to say something. So let's go to Dr. Kiki Sanford. Do you have any questions for Holly?
Absolutely. As you're getting ready to go into the water with the sharks, what kind of considerations do you have as a diver for being in the water and interacting with the sharks, or getting them to completely ignore you?
Well, it's a little hard to get them to completely ignore me, just because will be wearing a mask that's a little bit noisier as far as the breathing ability than, say, a rebreather, which has no bubbles, or regular scuba, that's a little bit quieter. But entering the water quietly, trying not to make a lot of splashing noises, trying to make sure my movements are fluid, that will definitely all help so that the sharks notice me less. But really, sharks are loaded with senses. So even if I am to go in there as quietly as possible, they still know about my presence.
So that's really fascinating. You said that they have really heightened senses. So is it eyesight? Is it smell? Is it electrical currents? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's basically all of those senses. They've got great eyesight, great smell, as most people know, and they've got a lateral line system. They've got pores in their face called ampullae of Lorenzini, which are gel-filled pores. These also help in detecting electrical stimulus. So sharks really have the whole complement like we do as humans, but sort of almost turbo. They've got extra sensory organs.
That makes a lot of sense, because sometimes the water that they're swimming in, although it's absolutely pristine clear here at the National Aquarium, may not always be so clear, right? So they need to use all those senses together to find their prey.
Yes, that's correct.
So I would love to hear from Justine. Justine, you look like you've got some questions.
I do, and I actually asked my Twitter followers if they had any questions, and somebody has the same question that I have. Devonte is saying, how much experience is required before interacting? I mean, if we wanted to kind of do the same thing that you're doing, like, do you have to go to school? Do you have to have the diver's experience? I mean, what is the process to go through to become a diver?
Okay, there are various ways of becoming a diver, but most people take a basic what's called an open water course. So you do need to be able to pass a swim test. You do have to have some comfort in the water. You need to go through that. But what you're seeing here is I'm what's considered an aquarist, even though I have the curator title. So I've spent years in the water working around the various animals in this exhibit, various fish in different capacities. So having a big comfort level, a real keen interest and just a love of the animals. Lots of people love the animals, but again, you need to have sort of the whole complement, and being comfortable underwater, because we feed, we clean, we interact. It's sort of a whole package, and it's just a big desire, I think, is really what makes people good aquarists as well.
That's
Were
great.
you ever scared at all? I mean, was this something that you just had always wanted to do?
No, I was actually pretty terrified of sharks when I was about 12. I saw
Yeah.
Jaws. I'm going to try not to age myself here. But that really did make me very nervous. And I really was more on a pre-vet route to work with big farm animals. That was something I always wanted to do. But I grew up on the water, so I loved to swim. And when I was in school and college, I wound up doing an internship at the New England Aquarium in Boston, Mass. And that's where it just took off. I did one internship, and I did another one. I got certified to dive. It became a real passion for me at that point, and I got to work with big animals, but now sea turtles and sharks are definitely one of my favorites.
That's awesome.
These are great questions. Doug, what's your question for Holly?
As a diver, we get to see the natural environment and get to see some of the things that happen to it. Can you speak a little bit, to what the average person who doesn't get to get in the water can do to help preserve that environment, and particularly help with the conservation effort for sharks and rays?
Sure. I would say the first thing is educate yourselves. Folks coming to aquariums and zoos and places that showcase these animals is super important, because when you don't, people tend to learn to love something when they understand it better. That's certainly what happened with me. But every day you can help in conservation efforts, whether it's you use reusable cloth bags at the grocery store, you eat sustainably, you eat locally, join a farm type of share, you basically, like, I bike to work because I'm in a great location, so I help to cut down on use of gas and that kind of thing. So there's little things you can do every day. Conserving water is a huge one that you can do every day that really adds to a giant, big effort that everyone collectively, when they do it, can really have an impact.
Great, thanks.
That's great. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are doing things at home that directly or indirectly help with sharks and all the other animals that share that ecosystem. And sometimes it seems like those small things that we do don't make a huge difference, but with everybody out there watching, everybody who's here, it really can make a difference. So it's important to know there's tons of shark lovers out there, and there's lots of nature lovers out there. Even the little kids that come to the aquarium are doing things to help out. So by spreading that word, it's worth it, right? I also want to go back and see if there's any more questions before you go in the water. I know we have some people on Twitter and Facebook, and we're going to get to you guys right now. The first question we have is from Carrie Thompson via Facebook. There have been several recent shark sightings off the coast of Cape Cod. What can we be doing to raise awareness about the importance of defending and protecting these sharks?
Okay, the species that's actually being seen off of Cape Cod are the great whites, and they're there because there's a seal population that's a healthy one that the sharks are attracted to. And as many of you know, great whites love seals. It's a big bang for the buck as far as what they like to eat. What I'd say for starters is don't get caught up in the hysteria. Learn a little bit more. Talk to family and friends about it. All those conservation messages we just mentioned to you are all really important. You can help spread that information. When you're swimming or when you're going to the beach, be smart about what you do. Don't swim alone. Don't swim after dusk. Don't swim in an area where you may see a lot of bait fish being worked or birds around. It's just being a really smart beach goer, understanding the environment you're going into. It's really their environment. I consider it not mine, even though I get the privilege of diving with them. So just be smart about it and educate yourself once again.
That's great. We have an exciting opportunity, invitation. Do you want to go swimming with sharks?
Yes.
I thought you would say that. All right, well, you're going to get ready to go in. At the same time, me and our buddies on the Google Plus Hangout are going to keep talking and chatting for a little bit, but we will see you in the water. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. So we wanted to tell you a little bit about the exhibit here at the National Aquarium, because we're super excited about it. Not only because we love sharks and the coral reefs that they call home, but it's also because it's a brand new exhibit for us. So you might be wondering, where did these animals come from? We have almost 600 animals in the exhibit. Well, they weren't born here. They were actually born in the waters near Australia. So how did they get from Australia all the way to National Aquarium in Baltimore? It takes a lot of people and a lot of coordination. The commonality is we all love sharks and these animals, so we want to do it with the greatest of care. So one of the first things we do is we partner with a collector that is actually in Australia. So Cairns Marine helped us by carefully and sustainably getting these fish and the sharks from their native waters. After that point, they got on an airplane. Now, I wasn't with them, but they got on an airplane, went all the way from Australia to Los Angeles. From Los Angeles, they were checked by some of our partners and our buddies to make sure their water quality was still good, they looked good, and they were healthy. After that, they went from Los Angeles all the way over to Dulles. And at that point, the National Aquarium staff picked them up in trucks and huge, gigantic tubs that were 8 feet wide and 5 feet deep. Just huge. Because when you hear about all the animals that are going into this exhibit, especially some of the really big rays, you'll know it's taking us a lot of effort and a lot of planning to get them in. So finally, they get here to Baltimore. Then what happens? Well, the exhibit's still under construction. But even if the exhibit was right, we wouldn't be putting the animals directly in. And I'm sure you can guess why. That's because we want to check them out once they get here too. So quarantine, which sounds kind of serious, is actually a really good thing for the animals. It allows us to test them, to look at them medically, to give them ultrasounds, do blood work, make sure they are totally healthy before they go in and share the exhibit with their friends. And speaking of their friends, we also need to make sure that they get along with each other. So the animals that were going to share the exhibit actually got to know each other far long before they went into this exhibit. And then there's the divers. You guys may be already hearing the sound of Holly's dive comm system she's getting into place right now. Sharks in the wild may never have heard that sound before. So we always have to acclimate and desensitize them to things like divers swimming in the exhibit 2 times a day. So I see Holly's getting into position. In just a few minutes, she'll be able to talk to us. So keep those questions coming through Twitter and Facebook, hashtag Shark Week Hangout, because we want to hear from you, and we're going to ask her some of these questions. So once the sharks are used to people, they're used to their buddies, and they're healthy, they get a clean bill of health, then we can introduce them into the exhibit. And we do that very carefully over weeks and weeks and weeks. And the smallest fish go in first. I bet my Google Plus people can guess, why do the smallest fish go in first? Doug, do you have any ideas?
Probably to help create the ecosystem in the tank.
That's right, exactly. So they need to know where their nooks and crannies are so that when the sharks come by, they have a home base. Now, our sharks are very well fed. We don't think they're going to snack on anybody, but we just like all of the animals to be very comfortable with their new surroundings. Now I see Holly is in place, so we are going to open the floor to questions for her, and I'm going to go to Matt. Matt, Holly should be able to hear you. Do you have any questions?
Holly, what can we do as a country to help with the finning issue that's been going on?
I believe you asked about the finning issue?
Yes.
And what people can do to help, is that correct?
Yes,
correct.
Okay. Well, folks can actually help support legislation. Obviously, you also don't want to actually purchase shark fin soup if you see it on a menu. And I'll take it a step further and say you don't want to really purchase shark products in general.
Those are great suggestions. And a good question, Matt. Dr. Kiki Sanford, question from you?
Yeah, I'm loving the exhibit and wondering how the blacktip reef shark fits into the ecosystem of the exhibit.
Well, on this exhibit, like they would in a real reef system, they're at the top of the food chain. So they basically keep things in a check and balance situation. So they do help weed out sick and old animals. Obviously here at the aquarium, we try to make sure we keep them satiated or full. We don't really want them weeding out the sick and the old, but that is a shark's normal job on a real reef system in the ocean.
Thank you. And Justine, question from you.
So blacktip reef sharks, I mean, how are they different than any other sharks? I mean, most sharks people think of are the great whites, so how are they different?
These blacktip reef sharks differ than a great white in the obvious sense, and obviously size. But these blacktip reef sharks are much more of a coastal, inshore reef shark, whereas great whites really are more pelagic, offshore animals.
Holly, I also, this is Heather, I saw someone swimming behind you, and that did not look like a shark. Is there someone in there with you?
Yes, there is. If this is who you're referring to, I have another diver with me. She is my senior assistant dive safety officer, Jackie Cooper, who is also attending me or watching me. And if it's not Jackie, the other large animal we have in here is Calypso, our green sea turtle.
That's true. They both have flippers, but this is the one with neoprene, so I think it's Jackie.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Doug, do you have any questions for Holly?
Sure. So we have blacktip reef sharks. We have Calypso. What other animals will be in this exhibit besides the sharks and the turtle?
There are a variety of teleos or bony fish. There's about 55 different species and over 500 fish in the exhibit.
So Holly's got her hands full. It's a beautiful exhibit, really takes your breath away. We are so excited to share it with you guys today. I'm going to take a question from our internet buddies. I've got a question about great whites. Longest time or amount of time we've kept a great white in an aquarium?
The longest and most successful great whites have been kept at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. They've had several juvenile great whites in the past years. They catch them small, working with fishermen off of the aquarium coast area, bring them in. They actually have kept them in their Outer Bay exhibit or one of their other exhibits, and then they've actually released them and tagged them when they've gotten a bit too large for the exhibit.
Yeah, that would be very cool to see. So we need a trip to California, it sounds like, right?
Yes.
Speaking of, just wondering, Matt, do you have any more questions for Holly?
Since you're talking about the reef sharks, what is their natural habitat and where do these come from in the aquarium now?
These blacktip reef sharks came to us from Australia, and much like this reef is a replica of a inshore reef system, they also probably were caught in a similar type of scenario in a more shallow area off of Australia.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Kiki, do you have a question?
Yeah, obviously aquariums and exhibits like this, the importance is to educate people about sharks. And this one species, the blacktip reef shark, is just one example. Can you just talk briefly about how many species of sharks there are in the world and how endangered are they? How much trouble are they in?
There are over 400 known species of sharks, but there are new species being discovered. And can you repeat the second part of your question?
Just wondering how much trouble they are in environmentally, how endangered different species are.
Environmentally, many of these species are in great trouble due to fishing, habitat degradation, and other types of things, but really finning is a big primary cause. And as you folks know, we also like to eat shark, and sharks are used for many products. So unfortunately, many stock numbers of sharks are at lows that are, considered threatened.
Thank you. And Justine, what's your question?
So, I mean, speaking about them being endangered, and I mean, what happens if all the sharks do go away? I mean, how does that affect all of us personally?
Well, personally, it affects us greatly as the health of our oceans rely on sharks. They are needed in this check and balance system I mentioned earlier. They're really vital to a healthy diversity reef system, as well as offshore areas.
It's absolutely true. That's why it's so important for all of us who love sharks to share that with all of our buddies. Doug, do you have a question?
Yeah. So as a diver, with new divers getting in the water who might be a little nervous about being in the water with sharks, what would you say on a dive briefing to put people's minds at ease and get them comfortable with the idea of being in the water with sharks and experiencing that?
Well, what I usually have told folks is that I've always considered it a very big privilege for me to be able to dive with sharks. Obviously, you want to be cautious when you're diving with sharks. Again, you want to pick appropriate species to be in the water with. If there's any nervousness, then folks shouldn't dive with sharks. But again, you want to be a calm diver, be considerate, and really understand what you're getting into. If I was going to a new area, I'd really try to investigate the species I was diving with and go with somebody who knew the animals and the dive sites.
Doug, going back to that, have you had a chance to dive with shark species? What's your favorite dive?
In Hawaii, I have gotten the opportunity a couple of times to dive with white-tip reef sharks, and I've been in the water with tiger sharks, but they've always been right at the edge of the blue, so I haven't actually, I've seen them come by in the shadow, but not real close.
That must be absolutely amazing.
It is pretty amazing.
We have a question from our friends on Twitter. Lindsay Densing wonders, do sharks sleep?
Sharks, unlike you and I, don't really sleep the way, again, you and I do. They will have periods where they'll slow down and be in a resting mode. And then other sharks, like say a nurse shark, that's a bottom dweller, has strong muscles around their gills that help, get the water flow over their gills, so they can actually sort of sit in a resting state.
So the blacktip reef sharks that we have that are swimming in there with you, they have a social hierarchy. This question's coming from Evan Beatty through Twitter. How do they develop that social hierarchy?
Well, it can be sort of an interesting setup where they can delineate by sex as well as size. And that helps them avoid aggression and also helps with their protection. So it's sort of like a social grouping, much like you would choose to hang out with friends that, obviously common interests. It can really be dependent, again, as I said, on the sex and the size of the animals.
Thanks, and we have another question from Matt for Holly.
We've all heard about bull sharks entering freshwater. Are there any other sharks that can enter freshwater rivers or brackish waters?
Yes, if I understood the question correctly, bull sharks actually have the capability of actually being able to survive in freshwater. In fact, they've been known to go up freshwater rivers quite a distance.
And Holly,
any other sharks that have that capability?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Are there any other sharks other than bull sharks that have that capability?
Off the top of my head, I'm not remembering. There may be.
And we have a question from Dr. Kiki for you.
Yeah, I have a question from one of my Twitter followers, Rodney Huff, who is interested in knowing when sharks like great white sharks attack their prey, we know that they hit them very hard. Do they ever incur damage from feeding?
Yes, they can. Great whites like to hunt different species of seals, and as we know, seals, are very strong animals with sharp teeth. They do have claws, so they can inflict wounds, in fact, on sharks.
And I guess that's also why they're so well adapted, so when they do go in for that strike, they help protect themselves. So now I'm wondering if Justine has any questions for Holly.
I do. One from Mike on Twitter, and he's wondering what and how often are the exhibit sharks fed, and how does that compare to their eating habits in the wild?
Our sharks here, right now, and as I mentioned, they're very new to the exhibit, are offered food twice a day. before 9 a.m., before we actually dive, because we surface feed them, and then after 4 p.m. In the wild, sharks will often have to tend to be more opportunistic. So, getting something that may be there at the time they're passing through. Whereas ours are obviously offered more of a routine time frame.
Or like me, I eat all the time, day and night. So whatever shark does that, that's my favorite shark. Question for Doug. Do you have a question for Holly?
Yeah, we spoke a little earlier about how many different shark species there are. Could you talk a little bit about the different roles, like, and how they might be bioadapted to certain foods or regions?
Yes. As I mentioned earlier, these sharks we have here, the blacktips, are more of an obligate ram ventilator, so they really need to keep moving to breathe. Depending on a shark's diet, its teeth really give you a story of what it eats. They could be shorter, more of a shorter type of tooth, or say some sharks almost have like a setup of teeth that is more of a fork and knife, so they can grasp something and then saw away at it. Say a bottom-dwelling shark, like a carpet shark, may have more of a grinding tooth. So depending on its habitat and the food that's available will really determine what the shark's teeth can look like.
And Holly, you did talk about the obligate ram ventilators, which is just the craziest thing to say. Obligate ram ventilator, obligate. It's hard to say, but what about those sharks that don't do that, that don't have to keep swimming? How does that work?
Like the nurse shark, which has a spiracle, basically they have muscles around their gills that actually help to bring the water in across their gills for breathing.
So I'm guessing that might help them because they do live in a different water column. So they're going to be hanging out where their prey is, and therefore they want to be eating on the bottom. Here's another question from Jared off of Facebook. Is there a vegetarian shark?
That's a very good question, but there's not. All sharks are really carnivorous, or more meat or other, obviously, fish eaters.
So I'm guessing the food that we feed in our exhibit is going to be all meat.
Yes. We offer currently with the blacktip sharks shrimp, squid, cut up mackerel or herring. We usually try to give some kind of a variety. And then we do offer our sharks vitamins as well.
Gotcha. I want to let everybody know at home and also our Google Plus Hangout buddies that we're going to be going live with Sharks After Dark with Discovery Channel Shark Week in just a little bit, in a few moments. So Holly, you're going to be hearing some new voices and be able to share all of your passion and your answers about sharks with another audience. So everybody hold on. We're going to have a really fun time connecting with Sharks After Dark in just a minute. Holly, what do you see swimming around you right now?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again?
What do you see swimming around you now?
Well, I see some triggerfish, surgeonfish, damselfish, anthias, sea breams, a whole variety of surgeonfish.
Fantastic.
A whole variety.
So just like the real ecosystem, I know that you are excited to be in there, and we wish we could all be in there. How warm is the water right now?
It's about 78 to 79 degrees Fahrenheit.
And that's pretty typical of what they would normally be in, right?
It could be possibly a little bit warmer, maybe the low 80s.
So that sounds pretty comfy and nice. So I'm just wondering, how long have you been diving, Holly?
Let's see, probably over 25 years. I have to think about my age. That's why I hesitated. Since I've been 18, and that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, we all know neoprene is slimming. We're considering all adopting it as our uniform, right? I want to walk around in neoprene just because I get all sorts of different questions. It's a little bit more cool, I guess. How is it? How are the sharks behaving compared to how they normally behave? Because you're in the exhibit with them right now. Any difference?
Well, the blacktip shark's favorite area of this exhibit is across the way from our deep dive. So it's a shallow area that's sort of a crushed media at the bottom, and it's a flatter zone where they can sort of cruise. Typically when we're in the exhibit, especially now that I have this mask on and there's lots of bubbles, they will spend their time in that area because they can school and move together as a group.
So that's somewhat unusual that they are schooling. Can you tell us a little bit about how they're socially different than some other sharks?
Yes. Some sharks will travel solitary or alone. These sharks really do like to spend time together as a social group, where you can have, say, the larger of the group or actually be sort of in the lead. In fact, I was walking around earlier, trying to get used to sort of seeing sort of the dynamics of our group. And with time, we'll obviously hope to learn more about each of the individuals.
So I have a question for all of our Google Plus Hangout buddies. Does anybody have a favorite shark? Now that's pretty hard to choose because there's over 400 species and probably species we don't even know about yet. But I'm just curious. I want to go to Doug. Do you have a favorite?
I have two favorites, actually. I think the wobegon is like the craziest looking shark you've ever seen before, so I think it's just really interesting to look at. And the Thresher Shark, which is pretty amazing because of the way it hunts. It basically has this incredibly long tail that it knocks fish silly with and then comes back and eats them. So I think those are two pretty cool, interesting adaptations.
Fantastic. How about you, Justine? Any favorites?
I'm going to have to go with that great white shark.
Yeah. And how about you, Dr. Kiki?
The hammerhead. I love hammerhead sharks. I think they're just fascinating about how they tend to congregate around seamounts out in the ocean, and how their eyes are very far apart, and how that affects the way that they behave and how they act. I think that they're just fascinating.
That's awesome. They are fascinating. Their senses are really heightened. Something about their nostrils. Do you know anything about that, Dr. Kiki, with their nostrils being spread out and that helps them?
Not much about it, just that it does that because they're spread out, it allows them to get more of a range of sense so they can figure out more accurately where things are in their environment.
Awesome. So Matt, what about you? Favorites?
Doug stole mine, the Thresher Shark. I love the tail, and I love also how they breach. Not just great whites are the only ones that breach, but the Thresher Sharks do as well.
Now that's something I haven't seen on film yet. So I got to get on YouTube. I got to get on Shark Week and find a picture of that because that sounds amazing. So we have some more time for questions. I'm going to go to one of our buddies coming through Twitter, Holly. How big can whale sharks get, and how many species have we discovered of sharks? I think we know that.
I believe your first question was, how big do whale sharks get? Is that correct?
That's right.
I want to say between 50 to 60 feet. They are the largest species of shark. And I believe your second part of the question was how many species? And as we mentioned earlier, there are over 400 known species of sharks.
That's right. Doug, you're a shark lover. What questions do you have for Holly?
I'm interested in the husbandry of the aquarium. Can you talk a little bit about the mechanics and everything that goes into keeping the animals alive and in great shape?
Well, here at the aquarium, many aquariums, we have a fairly large department of various people in our what's called our biological programs group. So we have animal health. The group that I'm in charge of is the fishes department. So that's comprised of aquarists and divers, often one and the same. Life support, who does a tremendous amount of work with our water quality. Before this habitat became this habitat, our exhibits and design folks obviously had a play in creating all of this coral. But there are different groups, like I said, whether it's life support, fishes, animal health, water quality, that all take part in maintaining this whole ecosystem.
Thanks.
It takes a lot of us, and Holly, we want you to come back up if you don't mind and join us topside so we can ask you a few more questions and hear what it was like down there. So come on up. In the meantime, I'm curious for all of our Google Plus Hangout folks, what was it that inspired you? We know you have some favorite sharks, but what really inspired you to be so attracted and fascinated by them? We'll start with Matt.
When I was small, 4 or 5 years old, we went to the beach, and we were told to get out of the water. There was a shark watch, and you could see that little fin way out in the distance, and I'm thinking, why? I mean, it's way out there. So go back home and just tried to learn everything I could about sharks. Being 5 years old, begging my parents to take me to the library and just reading and reading and reading, and that just grew from there. And then Jaws came out, saw it. Actually, I was cheering for the shark. Sorry, Roy. And it just has grown since there. And then, Discovery Channel, Shark Week, 26 years ago, every summer. It happens, usually during and around my birthday, so it's like the best birthday present ever. I got a week of nothing but sharks.
That's fantastic, and I bet you're not shy. Have you ever had a shark-themed birthday party other than Shark Week? You have. Awesome.
Yes.
So Dr. Kiki, how did sharks first touch you, inspire you?
Well, I mentioned at the beginning of the show that, of course, Jaws was something that was one of my first experiences, and it wasn't until college, really, that I realized that there's so much more to sharks than them being scary and being these crazy carnivorous beasts. And I had the grad school gave me the amazing opportunity to be able to meet with shark experts and enthusiasts, fellow grad students and professors who knew a lot about sharks and could actually talk about them and give information that wasn't available anywhere else. And so that's really where I got really interested.
That's where you caught the bug.
I caught the bug.
Yeah. Or the fin, I guess we would say. How about you, Justine?
I mean, I've always loved animals and sea life in general. So, I mean, every year my family would always go on vacation, and we would always go to the aquarium, and we'd always be like at the beach. So just seeing the sea life and just really, learning more about sharks. And honestly, I think that the Discovery Week or the Shark Week has really helped that. I mean, for me and I think everyone else. And my favorite thing on Shark Week is the constant slow-mo sharks. So I think everybody can probably agree with that, but it's just the coolest thing.
Absolutely. And how about you, Doug? What happened?
I in grade school and high school, I was kind of like a mixed biology, science, and arts geek, and so I got really into drawing sharks because the symmetry of the animals and the diversity is really cool. So I just remember drawing tons and tons of sharks in my notebooks and wherever. So that was where it first started for me, and then I started reading, and then later became a diver, and it all kind of came together.
That's fantastic. So we all kind of got the bug, got the addiction to sharks early on. Speaking of someone who loves sharks, I'm going to welcome Holly back. How was that?
Awesome.
I'm so jealous. I just got to stand next to you and get that shark. That experience, the vibe, it's got to be amazing. So we're going to ask our fans out there what questions you have, what it was like. So we'll start with Matt.
I'm just so jealous. I mean, I really don't even have a question for you right now. Question from Twitter that keeps popping up. What's the smallest shark species?
The dwarf lantern shark.
And those glow, right?
Yeah, about 7-8 inches in length.
Okay.
So that's a shark that could fit in your purse. That's crazy. So actually a lot of sharks are much smaller than people. 80% of them are smaller than we are. So that's pretty neat to know. A lot of people don't know that they are wide in variety of shape, size, feeding strategies, what they like to eat, where they live.
Correct.
Question from Dr. Kiki for Holly.
Yeah, so in the environment with the blacktip reef sharks. You're making this their home and they're going to be living there. Are you hoping that they will breed and reproduce and that you'll have more blacktip reef sharks that will eventually populate the aquarium that you'll also be able to send elsewhere?
The answer to that is definitely yes, and we do anticipate that they will breed, but this exhibit is limiting in size, so we will try to work with other aquariums and institutions to field out some of those offspring.
And we also have another question here. I'm wondering, what is the best location to swim with sharks? This comes from Adrian Adams off of Facebook. We all want to be you, that's why.
Well, the best place for me is obviously the aquarium, but it actually depends on the kind of environment you want to be in, because there are lots of places you can go to dive with sharks or swim with sharks. So that's a tough one for me to answer. I got a chance to dive with some sharks in the Galapagos, which is unbelievable, not just for the sharks, but the diversity of animal life and where I was. So it's a hard one for me to give one clear answer to.
Sure. Justine, what's your question?
So now, once you have these sharks in captivity, is there any way, or has there ever been a time that you've had to re-release them back into the wild?
That's typically not, from an aquarium standpoint, it's really not a good idea to necessarily release animals back into the environment. Basically, when we bring animals in, we put them in quarantine so that we're trying not to introduce parasites to our existing animals. When an animal's in captivity, it does learn to feed, obviously from a captive perspective, and also we could potentially introduce things back into the environment.
Thank you.
And Doug, what's your question?
We talked a little bit earlier about the schooling behavior, and that made me start thinking about the fact that sharks actually communicate with their body language, or many species do. Could you talk a little bit about that and what type of behavior someone might experience with a wild shark or see in the tank that they might be able to say, oh, that's the shark communicating either to other fish or the other sharks?
Yeah, what you'd see is potentially body postures, arching. You'll see, I want to say it's almost, I don't want to call it aggressive, but there's been definitely studies done on sharks and the different posturing they can actually do if they're feeling threatened or other types of behaviors depending on the circumstance.
Great, thanks.
We have a question here from Marcy on Facebook. It says, besides humans eating sharks, which we've learned that does happen, and sharks eating humans, are they good for anything else?
Well, sharks' most important role is going to be in the environment, alive. They are, again, as we've mentioned many times now, they are key in the whole ecosystem as far as being your check and balance animal. They've been used in various forms, cosmetics, the oils from their livers, in pet foods. They're obviously their shark skin for souvenirs, but really, again, their most vital role is in the environment.
Sort of a follow-up question to that from Minecrafter001 via Twitter. How many sharks are killed each month or year? How does that affect us?
I believe the figures, it's over 73 million, or it's even more than that. Mm-hmm. It's daily. I can't remember the figure off the top of my head, but it's many more than sharks ever kill humans. That's probably one of the most important messages, is we kill a lot more of them, whether it's finning or fishing or in the various different uses we have for them. So,
is there ever been a great white near our coast here in Baltimore?
I'm hesitating for a moment because I'm giving it some thought. I've recently moved from Massachusetts, and there definitely have been some seen in Massachusetts in recent years. I want to say a little bit closer. One was seen in the last couple months in the news. There was a report of one that was seen, and it obviously had a lot of newsworthy press around it.
So we have a question here from @Chase45661, Twitter. Have there been records of great whites in the Arctic or the Antarctic waters?
Not that I know of. That would definitely be a rare event for these animals. It is a bit outside of their range. They are circumglobal, and you find them all over the place, but I think that is exceeding their limits. But I'm not sure of all the literature that's out there on that.
Well, we do know sharks are found everywhere, and that we really do rely on them to keep the oceans healthy for all the animals that we love and the animals that share those habitats. We want to also tell you that unfortunately we're at the end of our Shark Week Hangout. We want to say thank you to absolutely everyone who's joined us at home and all of our Hangout buddies. Goodbye, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us at the National Aquarium today.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Happy Shark Week. Awesome.